Welcome back to the channel. It is I, Ninja Turtle, and today this video is all about Ororo Munroe, Storm, everyone's favorite weather controlling mutant of the X-Men. I've made 4 brand new customs. 2 of them you can see right here. Some other ones over here on the side, and we'll get to all of that. But today we're just concentrating on Storm. And like I said in the previous video, I just want to knock out a bunch of costumes of one character at one time. That way I can feel more satisfied and feel more progress is being made towards my goals of, well, I don't really have an end goal or an end game, but some characters I have long laundry lists of costumes I want to make. So doing one at a time and then not revisiting them for some time really gets annoying. So now I've knocked out 4 and we're going to talk about that. So yes, I've got a white Storm, the Jim Lee classic of the 90s, but also the silver variation of that, because some people see white and some people see silver when you look at that classic Jim Lee. But this is also just a update and a correction and just a stylistic change for me from what Hasbro normally does. So this is using parts from their own figures of, Hasbro's own versions of this costume, but also modified using different parts. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about the other figures in a second. So let's actually just concentrate on the white one for now, and then we'll come back to the silver one in a little bit, so that way you can see whatever differences are in that. But in general, if we're going to talk about the entire thing, one of the biggest changes that I made from using the original Hasbro version, which by the way I do have the cell shaded one right here, so you can do a direct comparison here. The cell shaded version, the retro carded version, they're all using the same body mold. They're just different paints and colors and stuff like that. Here I'm using completely different legs. These are not the same legs at all. These are bodysuit legs. So some of the legs that look like this, like from the AOA Jean, I consider these bodysuit legs. So I'm using legs like this. So the ones in particular on this one are actually from the Deadly Origins Black Widow. They're already kind of pearlescent white, and I just painted them white, so it doesn't matter. You can use these as well as long as you paint it. But that's what the type of legs that I'm using on pretty much all of the Storms I'm doing today are some variation of this kind of leg, the bodysuit leg, and then repainted. That being said, yeah, these legs are not the same. These are, one, they're not bodysuit legs, they're just kind of like painted flesh tone legs. And 2, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, all of the Storms that I've had using this body mold, whether it be the VHS Storm like this, or the retro carded Storm with a different white, or the black suited Storm that's using the same body mold, I've always had issues with them standing up, just standing. Whether they might stand for a lengthy period of time and eventually fall over, or just have a hard time getting them to stand for 5 minutes. But all of that is deeply rooted into the type of knees that they use on these figures. These are very small. Again, it's kind of hard to see given the camera, but you can take my word for it. I said this last week, or not last week, last video, in the Emma Frost video, that these really small knees that they use on the older figures, or just keep using every once in a while, these really small knees are very weak and they can't handle the weight of the figure, especially something like Storm and her heavy hair, and Emma Frost and her capes and things like that. They can't handle it very well, and they end up falling over, at least for me. I don't know how other people deal with it, or if they've had that problem, but for me, that's an issue. These knees, these legs on the Storm that I'm using, and all the other legs, the bodysuit legs, they're much bigger knees, a lot stronger, a lot sturdier, and can handle pretty much any standard figure of a female figure. And before you ask, or before you say anything, again, these knees are small, and the insides, all these sockets and stuff, are made specifically for these knees, so you can't take these knees and swap them into here. That won't work because these knees are too big. These are made specifically for these knees, and only these knees fit in here. So basically, this entire leg, because all of it connects, all of it is pretty much trash to me. I fodder like some parts and reuse some parts from this, and actually have a lot of these storms laying about, but I don't use the legs whatsoever because of the knee problem. So it is what it is. I don't use those knees. So there's that. As far as the rest of it goes, it is a longer lower torso. In comparison, it is using just a standard Kate Bishop type of torso, like so. And most figures have this sort of thing going on, and that's easy to come by. You do get a longer torso, you get a better looking butt overall, you get all the bells and whistles of that sort of figure. Of course, I had to sculpt the belt on, and trying to match it just how it normally looks. And then, yes, I actually use these arms right here, are the arms that came from this particular VHS cell shaded Storm. So I didn't repaint everything. And that's one of the things that I actually wanted to take care of as well in comparison is the paint. As you can see, this is all painted white, and this is all white plastic. One of the criticisms and reasons why I actually don't like this figure at all, the cell shaded Storm, is that the white is so bland, it's so muted, it's really like, it doesn't, like, the reason why people have a hard time when they look at the comics and they can't tell that if this is white or if it's silver or if it's black is because, one, the way they light it and shade it and on the comic page, it's either white with black shading, or it's silver with white shading, or it's black with white shading, or white with black shading, stuff like that. But the idea is that it's shiny, right? The light bounces off of it very well, and it's hard to tell what color it is. This is not shiny at all. This is very flat, or maybe matte in finish, but it's super flat. Like it's clearly white. And obviously this is pretty clearly white too, but in low lights it does look a little silverish. And then the white's bouncing off of it just the way the light's bouncing off of it just the way it should. There's hardly any light bouncing off of this. So there's other reasons why I don't like this body mold, but for most part I really wanted a shiny white. One things I did consider though is just taking this and adding a gloss finish to it. So because it's already white, it does have the black cell shaded lines on there. So if it actually had a gloss finish to it, I wonder what it looks like. I considered doing that, but because of the knees, I decided, like, no, just give it a whole nother body. Maybe if you don't have a problem with this, or you like the cell shading, I actually think it's the worst of the cell shaded figures, to be honest. But if you like it, maybe consider just adding gloss to yours, and that way, maybe you can have that shine to it, because it would also gloss up the black too. It might look really cool. One thing that is a detriment though, because I'm not using this body mold, the drilled in holes here for her X buttons and the shoulders, I don't have that luxury. I don't have that on my figure whatsoever. Everything is glued on, the shoulder pads and the X symbols. So that means I don't have the ability to have her raise her arms more than this T pose. She can do that much, pretty much, but she can't go any higher than that because everything's in the way. That sucks, it stinks, but it was something I was willing to compromise so I can have her stand and have better looking, longer legs and a better looking torso, longer torso, better proportions, and things like that, I was willing to compromise her articulation in her arms. Funny enough, I said I want her to be able to stand. I'm actually going to put her on a action figure stand and have her flying while I have her displayed. So yeah, there's that too. But that's just a coincidence. Still though, using the retro carded head version, I believe this head and hair was on the black retro carded Storm, the black suited one. She does have like eyeshadow in her eyes. It's like a little burgundy color. It's kind of hard to pick up on camera, but it was a completely repainted head though. So I did, or other than her eyeshadow, I repainted her earrings and her flesh tone, and her lip color, and then her hair is the same. So I didn't mess with that whatsoever, and just put that right back on. And then all of the rest of the stuff. Also, this her cape is glued on her back. So that is actually glued on there because again, it's not connected to any of the holes because there aren't any holes on here. So it's glued on her back, and that is the case for all of the figures that I have today. So now we can talk about the silver one. So the silver one is the same deal as just like the last one. Silver one. So the key differences here is obviously she's painted silver. Like I said, some people think it's white, some people think it's silver, some people think it's black. I personally don't see why it's black to some people, but we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But yes, a silver version. The secret sauce, though, I will let you know about that. To achieve this, I said this in the last video with Emma Frost, that I painted her hair of the diamond form in this particular paint. This is Angelus Pearlescent Sterling Silver. I used that for Emma Frost's diamond form hair, and I loved it so much, and I thought it would be perfect, and it is a perfect silver for this Storm figure. I think it just came out great. The cape on this one is actually the cape that was on the VHS Storm, because it was gray already, so I didn't have to touch that. Again, same details, sculpted on, belts and stuff. All of this is glued on her back, and all of this is, shoulder pads and stuff is glued onto her. The head is the head that also came on the VHS Storm, so I didn't touch that at all. No paint, no modifications on that whatsoever. Same thing with the hands, didn't touch those. It was just plop from here to here, and I really dig it. So the idea is that I'm going to have the white Storm displayed with my comic 90s X-Men shelf, but I have this Storm displayed on my Marvel vs. Capcom shelf, because in that game, Marvel, at least in Marvel 2, I have to look at all the other games to see if it's consistent, but at least in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, her default color is more silver than it is white, or it's actually kind of grayish, but that's where I'm going to have her, on that Marvel vs. Capcom shelf, with this hair and all of that stuff. And if I feel like swapping them, I can swap them. It doesn't really matter. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so here's our modification, just as a quick little break in between doing the actual full customs. Custom mod, I should say, not a full custom, of the original first appearance Storm. For whatever reason, Hasbro really nailed this figure and it looked great, except they made her bangles black, and I changed that to make them gold, like the way it's supposed to be. Like if you look at her costume, I don't know what reference pictures they were looking at, but Giant Size X-Men #1 and all of the old X-Men figure comics, I should say, her costume has gold bangles. So I just swapped, removed the black, sanded it down, primed, painted it gold, and put it right back on. I think it looks really nice, and yeah, it's super accurate. I was actually going to redo this entire thing. I was considering it, just because I wanted to give her a different torso. I wanted to give her Kate Bishop upper and lower torso and just redo the whole thing, and her arms are kind of weird looking. So I was just going to redo the whole thing, but I realized, because I really wanted to keep using the same legs, that it didn't matter. It didn't really matter. Her length, her overall height was going to be about the same. I want her to be a little taller, but since I was using the same legs, putting her on a Kate Bishop, it's just going to be about the same, and I was just going to end up doing more work than I needed to. So I just decided to just change the one thing, recolor her bangles, make them proper, and then I'll leave her skin tone. I don't want to paint over that or try to redo that whatsoever. This is fine as is. But yeah, that is that custom. Alright, so next up we have Outback Storm. So this one was not very complicated to do, and easily painted, and once I put it together, it was super fast. And it's actually kind of my favorite of the four that I've done. I think I really like this one the most, mostly because of the gloss on this. So to keep it simple, once again, bodysuit legs, just like these from AOA Jean or whatever figure that has the same sort of legs like this. So this one in particular, these legs are actually from Black Cat. So they were already black, but they weren't deep black. So I did sand them down and prime and repaint them to be just a regular black, and added gloss over everything. Regular Kate Bishop torso, sculpted the lightning bolt on her stomach and chest and belt, what have you. The arms are bodysuit arms as well. Those came from an Emma Frost figure. The black suited Emma Frost one. So same thing. It also has like little wrist guards or cuffs or whatever there. There, I didn't put any gloss on the cuffs, only because I kind of forgot. So I might one day come back and add some gloss to those as well on the outside. So those are just a regular plastic matte finish, but everything else has a nice gloss to it. Same deal at the back as well. It is glued on, but you can see here her cape. So one of those things is that if you get the retro carded black suit Jim Lee Storm, if you get the black version of it, it comes with a black cape, which I will show you that in a little bit later, but I don't have a bunch of those. I actually only bought one of those black suited Storms, so I already used that cape on a different Storm, and again I'll show you that later. So I have a bunch of these white Storm capes like this, and I ended up coming up with the idea, instead of spending a bunch of money on buying a bunch of black suited Storms just for the cape, why don't I try painting a white one black? And that's exactly what I did. I painted a white one black. It's not beautiful, perfect, or anything like that, but it works. I have a bunch of these laying around, and I was able to utilize them. So I just took them, a paper towel, and just painted right over all of the white. It did bleed a little bit, but it's not really, you can see some bleeding here. It's not the biggest deal to me. You can see also the string is still white around her wrist there, but whatever, it's not that big a deal to me, so I'll take it. Again, the rest of her is sculpted on the neck, going up around to the side of her neck there, painted yellow, again all gloss. And then this head is the same head that's on the retro carded Storm, VHS Storm. It's the exact same head sculpt, but remove that hair, and then I ended up taking some Shikla hair and just cutting it down off the sides and using just some sculpt to fill in her head to make it more bald there, and then use Procreate putty to sculpt her hair. And so you can see a little bit of the Shikla-ness right here, but the rest going on along the sides and starting up top here is all Procreate putty. Second time I've used Procreate Putty, and I'm getting a little bit more acclimated to how it works, and hopefully I'll be really good next time, because I really need to get that next custom to be good. But yeah, this all works really well. I really like this one. Like I said, the gloss, once I put that gloss paint on it, it changed how I felt about this figure entirely. There's also a little bit of sculpt on her thigh. You can barely see it, but it is sculpted there. Just like, I guess she has boots on, but she's still wearing all black. So this is yeah, that's it. There's nothing else to this one, so let's get to the last one. Alright, so our last one is Uncanny X-Force slash X-Men Volume 4, number 1. I'm not exactly sure what they want to call this particular Storm costume, but this one is this costume, which Hasbro already made this. I think it's technically the first Storm they ever made. Possibly from Hasbro. I mean, it's not the first Marvel Legend Storm, but I think it is the first one that they made. And yeah, I actually still have that one. It's right here in my hand. I'm going to pull it out. So I decided to remake it because of the same issue that I've already mentioned before, and that is the knees are really small on the old figures. So I can barely, again, this one's black, but the knees are small on these old figures, and she can barely stand. Meanwhile, the figure I just made falls over. But no, she truly has. I've had this figure, this original version. Okay, we're gonna do that now, huh? I've had this original version for this entire time, like 10 years, I guess. All right, I'll hold this up, and then she's gonna fall over because of balancing issues. But yeah, I've had this one for like 10 years or so, however long it was ago that it came out, and this thing is worth a lot of money. But I think it's because of the Build-A-Figure Jubilee, partly, but also, I mean, it has a badass haircut. I really love this head sculpt. Unfortunately, I did not want to fodder it. I actually was considering doing that because I wanted to use this same head sculpt on mine, but I didn't want to fodder it because I want to sell it. This thing's worth a lot of money. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I remade it. Like, if I can get a pretty penny for this one, making it into this is not a big deal. I would have come up and made money, profited. So there's that. But yeah, the real issue is, again, the knees. That's literally the only real reason why I even bothered to remake this, because of the knees. She's always had problems standing up. I used to put putty at the bottom of their feet, just so to help her stand. And now that I'm investing in action figure stands, I don't want to put putty on any of my figures' feet anymore, because it's sometimes hard to get off, and it's just kind of nasty sometimes, and yada yada. I did consider making a resin copy, like making a mold and copying this head, but there's only so many versions of Storm that has hair like this, and I didn't want to waste molding on that and then never ever using it again. And then there's also on eBay, I did see somebody selling it's either a resin copy of this head, or they made their own custom head sculpt with hair just like this for Storm specifically. And I considered buying it, but money is a little hard to come by right now. It's a little tough. So I just decided to pass on buying that head. Maybe in the future, if I really want her to have that hair again, I'll consider buying that head from this guy on eBay. But for now, I think this is just fine. Overall differences. So the biggest difference would be like the color here. I chose I think it's called ivory color on this, as opposed to white or gray or silver or whatever the color is supposed to be. I like this color just fine, so I went with that. This one comes with these wedges here, and they're okay and all, but I ended up making my own wedges and giving it a little bit more paint detail than what Hasbro did, which I don't even know if it's not necessarily correct or not, but from what I saw, the reference pictures had paint back there, it had paint here, a little bit extra lines on her arms and stuff that the Hasbro version does not have. And overall, since I'm using the same technique where I painted this cape, it was white and I painted it black, glued it on her back. It's not quite the same as what Hasbro did, but I am using bodysuit legs, bodysuit arms. These legs are actually from the Black Widow that came with the motorcycle, so they were already black, and I only painted this the ivory color here on that. And the arms are also from that Black Widow on the bike, so I only painted her forearms, and that's about it. The yellow could have been gold, but again, since I'm using this this cape that was white and yellow, I decided to keep it yellow instead of making it gold, so that way all of the colors matched. Because on this old figure, it was more of a golden color, and all of this on the cape is golden. That was another reason also, you see the straps or whatever, white cloth. I was considering foddering this one because it does have a more golden bangle like attachment there for the wrist. So I was considering it, but the way this turned out, I'm okay with her not having a full-on mohawk, which though I did attempt to do. I did attempt to add some Procreate putty to extend this out and make it more of a long ponytail. That did not go well, so not this time. I just decided to, okay, well, she doesn't need it that badly, it'll be okay, and just moved on and kept it as is. By the way, I didn't say this before, and I should have said it. The chest on the upper torso on this one, as well as the two 90's Jim Lee, the white and the silver, it is using a regular Kate Bishop upper torso, like this, but I used a Dremel and dremeled out in between, in the middle, dremeled that out and shaped it so it looked a little bit more shapely. One, I did that again. Here's the white storm there. I did that mostly because, one, I want to use all of my Kate Bishops. I have a lot of those laying around. Two, because if I use like a Shikla or something like that, it would have like a rib cage, like bone structure in the rib cage, as opposed to having, like you can see here, it's more cloth, like because she's wearing clothing, but still wanted to have a little bit more shape going in between each of her breasts, and that's all on all of those. Just that's how I wanted it to be. But yeah, that is it for all 4 of the Storm customs as well as the modification. Let's try to get some comparisons and some teams together before we roll out of here. Alright, here is that last Storm, which is, again, it's either Uncanny X-Force, which I don't have any of the characters when she was a part of Uncanny X-Force. I don't have any costumes or characters yet from that run, either made or purchased. So we're going to go with X-Men number 1 volume 4, Jubilee, and Kitty Pryde. Kitty's on that team. She had a different haircut. That particular issue was, or not issue, that run of X-Men was an all-female X-Men team, which I thought was a great idea and still think it's a great idea. And yeah, so she was on team with all of them, and that's what Jubilee was wearing around that time, I believe. And that's kind of why this happened. I'm actually planning on remaking this, so I might be selling this as well, because this is also the Build-A-Figure piece that came with this Storm, right? This Storm was packaged with her whole like upper and lower torso, and I think the arms, perhaps. No, I think it was just the upper and lower torso, and maybe, and the jacket, and then each arm was with one person, and then the legs were someone else, or something like that. But yeah, I might end up selling both of those because I want to remake this with all of those new Jubilee heads that I've got laying about, and also remaking it just so she's taller because I think she should be taller than this. But that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, if I can make some money off of those, that'd be awesome. All right, that's that. Okay, we have first appearance Storm and her properly colored gold bangles with her 2-pack mate Thunderbird. First appearance Thunderbird. I forgot to mention that the shoes on that last Storm, the one that with Kitty Pryde and Jubilee, the shoes that I turned into wedges were actually the same shoes that were on this figure here. I made copies of these shoes, and then I filled in this gap, in there with some epoxy sculpt to turn them into from heels into wedges. That is it, and painted them properly. But yeah, there's these two. All right, we have our Outback Storm and our brown costume Storm or Wolverine and Dazzler, which are like Outback as well. So they did mention, Hasbro mentioned, literally, was it yesterday, the day before, on their live stream with the announcement of the Outback Rogue, that, by the way, I will not be purchasing that Outback Rogue. I'll get into that in a second. That they were going to make more Outback figures, X-Men figures available possibly in 2023. So we might be seeing more of the Outback team, not just Rogue. So I expect them to be doing Storm in that costume, or this one, which would be interesting, especially if theirs is decent. Most likely I'm not going to like it. I don't like the Rogue, but if I do, at least like the head sculpt on it, because this hair I really like. It's not exactly what I wanted it to be. It's not exactly how it was in the comics, but it's something like that. If the head sculpt on the Storm that they might make is better than the head sculpt that I made, I could buy it and just swap it and put it on this body. Especially since I didn't paint the neck or anything else like that for flesh tone, it can just be a head swap, and I could still use this body, and I wouldn't have any problem with that. But just like my Emma Frost, I said last video, Hasbro doesn't make them make Emma Frost the way that I like her to be, so I have to make all of my Emma Frosts. They don't make Storm the way that I like her to be, so I have to make all of my Storm, and they don't make Rogue the way that I want her to be, so I have to make Rogue. So the Outback Rogue that they announced, I'm not interested in. I'm going to continue to make my own Rogue. I was planning on making that Rogue at some point down the line anyway, so that'll be fun when I get to it. But yeah, that's that. I'm not buying that Outback Rogue. Only, in fact, the 275 3-packs, I'm not buying those either. Even though they, some parts, I actually really like the Stormhead sculpt a lot, but in general, I'm not interested in those team costumes, and they're really pricey, so I'm not interested in that either. But we'll see. Okay, we have our White Storm, cel-shaded Wolverine, VHS box. And actually, when I grabbed this, I thought this was the cel-shaded Jubilee, but it's not. This is the first Jubilee. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one, but that's okay, because this is actually what I have on my 90's X-Men shelf. I have this one with this Jubilee, and then she's gonna go right next to all of them. Overall, looks great. Love the way they are. I do have the silver one right here as well. So you just swap her in just like so, and now you can see that as long as we feed her good. There you go. That works too. That looks really good. Again, I don't want the cell shading on my figure in general. I only find that the Wolverine cell shading, the Morph cell shading, which I grabbed him too. Where did he go? Here he is. Here you go. Morph and Storm. There you go. I like the cell shading on both of these, even though this one's just kind of okay. This one's the best. It's actually the best Wolverine ever. And then the cell shading Jubilee, which this is not it, but that one is very good. All of the other ones I don't like. So, you know, even Jean Grey, which I have right here, I meant to talk about, but I forgot to talk about it. I don't like that one at all. So, yeah, it is what it is. This is what it'll be. Alright, and now we have our silver Marvel vs. Capcom version of Storm. Again, that's where I'm going to put her, so I'm going to call her that. With Chun-Li, Alpha Chun-Li. And yeah, real quick, not X-Men talk. I am going to repaint this Chun-Li sometime next year. If you probably missed out, I did make a community post with this Chun-Li because the Power Rangers Cross Street Fighter Chun-Li figure came out already. I wasn't expecting it, but it came out like a month ago, and I was able to take the effect pieces and actually use it on this Chun-Li. So I'm going to actually, now that I have that, I'm going to be making some more Chun-Li's in the near future, at some point next year, I should say, and that's going to be a ton of fun because I'm super excited for all of that. But this one needs a quick repaint to get rid of the Mod Podge, make the paint consistent, change her flesh tone, fix her eyes, and fix her ribbons and stuff, because one of them broke, and I have better ways to do this now. But yes, Marvel vs. Capcom, she's going on that shelf with Chun-Li, maybe even next to her, I'm not sure. Can't wait to actually update you guys on that shelf. I'm going to clean it up very soon, and then maybe, just maybe, because I do have the Iron Man as well with the proton blaster, proton cannon. I do have him as well. I just need to clean up the shelf before I start making videos on it. But I'm probably going to wait a little while longer because I want to fix Sakura as well, and Cammy, and then work on some other characters. Probably when I make Birdie, because Birdie is going to go with Sabretooth. So when I make Birdie, I'll probably have everything cleaned up and make an update video on the Marvel vs. Capcom stuff. Alright, last one of the day. I was going to try to get all of the Storms in camera at one time. All of the ones that I've made, but it's just not, I don't have enough room. I have a different setup, so I have a smaller space now. So I can only put so many on camera at once. But again, Outback Storm, Silver Storm, the first Storm custom I made, which is basically what she's wearing in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so that's what I call it, but she actually did wear this in the comics as well. And I did, as promised, said the black cape that came with the retro carded black suited Storm, that's this cape here, and I used it on this Storm. So that's why I don't have any more, or that's what I did with the one version of it that I had. So this isn't painted at all, it's just the way it came from Hasbro, but it's on this custom. And then my Asgardian Storm that I finished a few months ago. So go check out that video if you're interested in that. There's a whole video on Asgardian Storm, and there's a whole video on this mid-2000s Storm, the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Storm. And then, of course, you just watched those. Thank you for watching this super long Storm video, because I know I talked a lot about her today. This is, again, the reason why I wanted to make this video, is because I wanted to knock her out the way. now that I've made all of these storms, I'm a little satisfied with Storm. I don't need to make any more in the immediate future. Not to say 2023 I won't come back to her. I might. There are actually way more Storm costumes that I wanted to make, or I still want to make, more than I realized. There's Savage Land Storm, which I was doing research on, and I almost made this time. I was very close to doing it, but I ended up deciding to do Outback Storm instead. But it was super close for Savage Land Storm. So next time, she will definitely be made. And then one I didn't get a chance to squeeze into the video of, because yeah, I should have said something about Punk Storm. This is the Hasbro version. I used the Punk Storm head on the X-Men Volume 4 Storm. But I'm definitely remaking this one too, because I want to give her a longer, lower torso, as well as maybe giving her bigger legs. Maybe. I still might use these legs too, because they are pretty good. But all of the other storms are pretty curvy and have fuller legs than this. But she was pretty skinny at that time, so I'll consider continuing to use this. But yeah, I want to remake that. Punk Storm. There's her 90's costume that was mid 90's, and she's like purple, and she had like long hair coming off her front of her head. There's her current costume, and like her, I don't know, the House of X, I think is what you want to call it, that costume. And then all of her Hellfire Gala stuff. So there's a bunch of that. And of course, by the time I make another Storm, you know, there's been Hellfire Gala 2021, Gala 2022, Gala 2023 most likely is going to happen. She'll have a new costume. So we'll see. I might end up having to make that as well. So who knows? Make sure you subscribe, though, if you want to see more Storm customs in the future, as well as more customs of all sorts of nerdy things, comics and gaming and anime. This is actually the last comic book character that I'm going to be making a custom for a little while. My next list of characters, who's next, is Laura Matsuda from Street Fighter V. So this is a video game character. And then after that is actually quite a few Pokemon characters that I'm going to be working on. Some more video game stuff. And I think anime is in there as well. Yes, I won't spoil that. Yes, there's definitely an anime character in there. She's very relevant right now. So that will be happening over the course of the next couple of weeks and months. So yeah, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.